Hello. Hello, you wonderful, wonderful you. So I'm going to have to start over because I had my audio turned off. So I'm a little like, what was I talking about? So in this video, I'd like to discuss or talk about seeing the world as having our spiritual experience in this world, in this everyday world. Okay, let me recalibrate. So today I am really been thinking about the spirituality in everyday experience. In fact, give me one moment. I'm going to grab some mala beads. So these are my mala beads that I've had the longest. They're made out of the Bodhi tree seeds, and then they're waxed, so they're sealed or whatever. And then this is coral and amber. This is from Tibet. I'm going to share that with you really quick and kind of get us in a spiritual vibration here. And it's got these. And these are the counters, the markers. And you slide those. Isn't that pretty? This is brass and leather. This one was a little pricey. Not as bad as they can get though. I know that mala beads that are they're special made can be pretty pricey, but this one wasn't too bad. But this one's really beautiful and I feel very grounded by this one. I like this one a lot. I don't use it as often as I had intended I would, but you know, that's what spirituality is about. And that opens up to me now the conversation of, put that in my lap, of spirituality in the everyday and experimenting. That's the biggest probably aspect of this that I think that I've become aware of for myself. And I think that this might be helpful to others, and I want to share this information, this opportunity of my own experience, and see if this message reaches others and helps them with their process. So experimenting. When I first began doing ritual, ceremonial, spiritual practices, church wasn't a thing for me ever growing up. So that ritual didn't work for me, although I did enjoy parts of it. Like Catholicism has a very interesting ceremonial aspect to it that I appreciate for the beauty of it, but I never held anything to it. And it wasn't until actually that I got to the point where I'm at now, where I'm outside of conventional religion, that all of a sudden I've begun to be very connected to this process or this experience. But it's only been through a good amount of effort. It's been experimenting the entire time, and it still is, and it always will be. That will always, 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 can I say it enough? That will always be the thing, is experimenting. So it's something that first I started with books, and because I'm in one of my levels of comfort is reached through intellectual process. So if I can understand it, then in that side of my experience, then I can translate that into something deeper, which actually turned out to be quite true. And I apologize if I become distracted. You can't see anything, like it doesn't even look like anything is there. But I got stung by something last night. Mother fucking A, it hurts. And it'll be fine, and then it starts burning again, as they like to do. But that's what actually was part of this experience. So it's been an interesting week for me. It's only been 2 days. So the experience experimenting, I approached it with other people's information. Like this book, I've seen somebody else post on, that I follow on Instagram or Twitter. This one. I really liked this one, and Wicca was something I felt comfortable with, or I started actually with Druidry, and I still very much appreciate that because the Celtic aspect and me having Scottish heritage and all of that. So it's something that was kind of easy for me to get into. Things that were the Mexican, like the country of Mexico has a very very cool subculture religiously, but it's also can, in my opinion, get quite dark. So that one kind of scares me. I'm not a spiritually mature enough person to really handle that kind of experience yet, or that's just never been my thing. But as I've gone through and experienced all of this, reading these books and exposing myself to things that were uncomfortable for me at that time, all of a sudden now it's like, cool, I don't have to like all these other things. That's it. That's literally what it is. And I think that that's why people who perhaps participate in these countercultural spiritual practices and religions, they discover not the devil of power. They're not, that's like, I think a huge misunderstanding of what this experience does. It allows you to find out who you are, what you need, and how you engage in the world. And that's where the experimenting comes in. And it's not about, I think when people leave conventional big cultural religions, I think that what they might fear and what may be a part of our experience, because I'm also dealing with this, is the notion of what's the unknown is evil. And it's bad and it's going to hurt you, and I think that that's a good part of it. And experimenting, I think, took on a very negative connotation for me. So my intuition radar was very broken, as I've begun to now realize, which I thought I was very intuitive because I have a very empathetic relationship with the world, but that has nothing to do with it. Those are two very separate things that work together. But the spirituality in the everyday is something that can be of great comfort, especially people with anxiety. I am very, I've suffered with anxiety for many years, and I watch videos of people who have it and deal with it. And I think it's because it's nice to have other people speak what you feel and how you think and your experience. And what I discovered is that I can tell those who have found a spiritual practice, or some spiritual meaning, something that speaks just to them individually, something that is of insight and comfort and relief and support and whatever else they need. That's not the human world, like the human world can let you down. But the spiritual realm, in whatever, spiritual practice you follow, Christianity, Islam, what else is there? Judaism, there's a lot of different, Mormonism, there's just tons of people's different options out there. So that's what you do, experiment. But it's when you go for it for yourself, the individual, rather than the mass mentality, that I think that we find our answers. And I start these videos thinking this is so straightforward, and then I realize this is a big basket of information. So the experimenting for the individual isn't exclusive to what is allowed. What answers life for us and the unique self is something that we only ourselves can find. And that can be very daunting, because when I first started this, I think this may just literally be the only topic I can discuss because this video is going to go too long. So I guess I'm just going to stick with the experimenting this time. So here we go. So experimenting means discovering what doesn't work. So I have to go out into the world, and I still have to go out to the world, and I still have to witness and experience and be mindful of the times when I'm having a really shitty time. And I say a really shitty time because when you have anxiety, it doesn't take much for it to get to that feeling, even if it's not true, okay? Because I can have a memory of something very positively, but all my emotional reactions to it are very anxiously ridden. So I am like, that's a very harsh reality of this experience. But that pain and discomfort, by experimenting with that even further, I decided that I would start with doing kind of like shadow work. I didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of went with it. And this is when I very first started with the Wicca thing. I had never done ceremonial practice really of any sort, so I was experimenting with it, and wow, is it powerful, but I didn't know what was going on, and I still am learning very much so. So those who have a lot more ceremonial practice than me are like, they'll describe this very clearly, I think, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe they have more of knowledge of this, but I've begun to realize what it is they're talking about. And but it took my understanding I needed exactly for me to be experimented with the world. So I had to be willing to watch content on YouTube that I didn't agree with or that made me uncomfortable, not in a making me feel bad kind of way, but making me feel like, oh, I don't know, this is somebody else's perspective, and can I accept this information? But I got an intuitive feeling, and this is where I started to practice, of what would be good for me. And I watched all kinds of things. I watched a guy who does black magic only exclusively, and he very much promotes that and supports that of himself. But he seems to know his shit. So who am I to say? I've experimented with like Golden Dawn system, which has a very negative connotation, but I found a side of it that actually was quite insightful. And I was like, okay, Scientology, funny enough, even though I laugh at it endlessly, and it's probably the only one I can't seem to get behind, it's something that even the little bits of information of what we know about that, or I know about that, it may not be how I see it, but I could see how they think that, or how they see that. And so, because if you look at any practice at all, it can describe everything, but you have to now look at all those other things to see what part these are all playing. So Christianity has a perspective that Golden Dawn system shares, that Kabbalah shares. Like, these are all, those two others are are cult religions, right? And Christianity is considered very mainstream. So when I experimented with belief systems and started seeing what was out there and what worked and what didn't work in my knowledge, like what I thought how things were, kind of, or felt how things were, is when I discovered my answers, my needs, my perspectives. And the reason why this isn't wrong is because really what I feel, what we're doing, just put this out there, and this is a very broad term, so please do not isolate it to something that is very limiting, okay? So if you can't push out everything that you think right now, right? Just make a huge void around yourself and just imagine this bubble that's holding you in. It's just 2 feet outside of you. And it's just comforting and it's warm and you don't worry about anything in between that space. The thing that we're experimenting with, to be honest, it really is just God, right? People call it spirit, they call it divine, they call it whatever. And I did not like the word God for a long time, because of the limited perspective I think I had on it. And once I experimented further and further and further, I began to find other perspectives on that resonated so much more with how I felt. And then I felt comfortable with that. And once I did that, all of a sudden now I can look back on everything else. All these other things that I tried, maybe didn't like, maybe was uncomfortable with at one point, but the further I went and the further I went and the wider my perspective got in terms of spirituality, it just grows exponentially in the sense of acceptance and peace. That is something that is what experimenting does. Experimenting, it isn't an end result. You're never going to get there as far as you're concerned. As far as your human conditioned egoed self is concerned, you're never going to get there because it always wants this feeling of establishment, and that's a very fleeting concept at best. So as I continue to experiment, I reach these kinds of points with my anxiety, to speak specifically to that as an indicator of anything, is that my anxiety began to be less prickly. I wasn't dominated by it as strongly. I could make decisions and choices through it. Like, I wasn't disabled by it. It used to knock me out and I didn't quite understand what was happening. I had to succumb to it though, because it felt like, and this is like, actually, like, I'm reflecting on this now going, wow, this was not some small deal here. I remember, like, I went through periods of time where I couldn't get up off of a sitted surface. Like, it just wasn't going to work. So I developed a lot of sitting things that I would do. To be honest, I'm not surprised that that's why I learned to crochet and knit, because I realized people who like to sit for long periods of time, women especially, men are getting in there too, they tend to do things like this, and I'm starting to put that together. So drawing became mandatory. I do think of myself as an artful creator, but drawing has always been a fearful thing of mine. And when I experimented with that, everything became an experiment. So even sitting, I can look back now at and say, sitting for periods of time, it happens. It doesn't mean I stop. That's it. I just need to physically rest. I'm exhausted. I've had an emotional rough few days that may not seem all that big a deal, but were really hard for me to process. So this right now reminds me of that gift that I've given myself, because every opportunity I have of living, being on this planet, is an opportunity to experiment. Even in my sleep, it's an opportunity to experiment. Going to bed became kind of fun for me. And it was like, well, what kind of dreams can I have tonight? Or what kind of, because I started having very beautiful dreams, like animal spirits and things of that sort after our shamanic retreat. That was very much a catalyst for this. But it allowed me, through my experimentation, to get to this, not end, but to get to this point where these became choices. The more I experiment, the more choices I find. Now, 80% of it may not work. And that's the thing. But it's not about what doesn't work. It's about what does. And so all those things that don't work, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It just means it's not yours, right? It's not my answer. So like, I have bought numerous decks of tarot cards, and I decided to do this because I was getting really frustrated with the Rider-Waite. The symbolism didn't work for me for some reason, or it just wasn't in a format I could begin with, I guess. So I began to experiment, and I just kind of bought whatever. I haven't bought anything what I think of as like special, but not that they're not effective. So the first one I bought, and this is my little bag I made for it. It's the size of the cards with the book, but that's the only thing about cards, they're super slick, is the Hermetic Tarot. And Hermeticism was something that resonated with me. And the drawings on this one, like, this is the devil. Like, the imagery on this, like the hangman on this one is to me, so much more powerful. Isn't that nice? And then this is the back of all the cards. And if you read or study Hermeticism at all, this might appeal to you. It's a regular deck, major, minor, and then a little book. And the book is okay. I think if you've gone through the Rider-Waite kind of introduction to this experiment, you might have realized the format and how they describe things. Like the descriptions of the cards are very, very basic. So it takes what I consider to be a little bit more of an advanced practitioner to understand the meanings. These cards are very similar in that way, but for some reason, because I have more understanding along with like astronomy and stuff like that, or astrology, I understand a bit more of the symbolism and stuff. Like it'll put like the sign from Mercury or Venus or Virgo, or they'll put all the kind of stuff in there. So I experimented and found these cards that I really enjoy. This one's really, really good. If you are an artful, colorful, mindful person, if that's how your brain works, you'll really probably like these. These are very intuitive. I like those a lot. And then I tried these out recently, medicine cards. These are spirit animals and totems, animal totems and stuff like that. So I'm just experimenting with these different things in an effort to discover what I need. The opportunities are endless. It can come from people. It can come from your reaction or emotion to something. That's been huge, and I talk about that in the next video about petty tyrants, and that's an experiment into like a kind of a one topic experiment there. But everything that we have available to us, like right now I'm having insight into myself as I speak, and I'm getting these kinds of my own reactions to what I'm saying. And so like I feel like this slight discomfort going on, and it's like, oh no, you're talking about yourself. Like this is an experiment for me to witness how I react to what I say. And it makes me much more aware of where I'm at in my experience in the world. And as such, I can offer myself comfort in times of stress. That's been of utmost importance to me. That was the whole leading drive for all of this. The opportunity to feel better when I was at home by myself, like without the distraction of the world around me. I wanted my home to be a place where I felt much more comfortable, where I felt safe and secure. This is all experiments I conducted. How did I want to be in my home secure and feeling safe and feeling comforted? How did I want that? So I had to experiment. And I will tell you, my house is not perfect. It is not perfectly clean or finished in the sense of the changes that we're making to it. But that didn't matter. It wasn't the exterior, it wasn't the facade, it wasn't the materialism of it. It was a feeling I wanted. So go with the feeling. Go with just the feeling, the reaction you have, I guess you could say, but it's more in the heart, like in the heart space. But go with that feeling. The experiment will guide you. I promise you this, 100%. This experimenting will not do a disservice to you. It may have its challenges, and it very much will. I'm not going to false that one. I'm not going to try to play that one down. But the challenges are how you discover what is not you. And then you'll come upon things that are you. And then not you, and then will be you, right? That's who you are. And you'll feel better, and that's how you'll know you're reaching conclusions. You're coming to points or steps of information, really, not conclusions. But in that experience, it'll feel like a conclusion. Oh, I'm finally through that experience. What am I like with this? Okay, good. Now I've got that answer. So these are all tools for your backpack, as my therapist calls it. This is all just information you need for your equation. Talked about that before. It's like one big equation you're trying to figure out. So experimenting is how you fill in the blanks. So yeah, that is spirituality in the everyday, one big experiment. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope this helps you. And if it does, please give me a thumbs up or make a comment, and both. That would be great too. I love talking about this stuff, and I'm slowly but surely earning my wings in that regards of the internet discussion arena. Yeah, so much love, big hug, and you are a wonderful you. Thank you for being. Mwah.